Welcome back. Well, we left off in the part 3C of the Sales at POS tutorial. We learned how to add parts to the sales order. And now that we know how to sell parts, let's see how to return them. A snapshot is made of every finalized invoice and saved in the invoice image file. So when the customer returns with the product and the invoice, enter the customer and click the invoice image button to find the sale and begin returns. Here it is right here. Click the Begin Returns button. Double-click the modifier that best describes the return. Is it a core, a defective, or a resellable return? Let's make it a resellable return. Then double-click the part, brings it back to the cell line. And at this point, if they're returning the quantity shown, just hit Enter. Or edit the quantity before hitting Enter. The grid shows the return, so click Done Returns. At this point, you'd finalize the return ticket, but we'll see how to do that further on. Sales and returns can be added to the same invoice, so if the customer wants to buy an item, it can be added before or after the return, and quickly. There are a few invoice option setups under the Return tab. The new return valid days is set to 0. It doesn't prompt. It will find the sale no matter when it was made. But in this case, let's say we only want to keep them for 10 days. If a return is started for a part that was purchased outside the number of days, a prompt indicates the history isn't found. Click OK, and the return is aborted. Now, if the sale invoice isn't found in Invoice Image, or you've already selected the modifier so you don't go to Invoice Image, a pop-up opens to determine how to continue. And we'll look at each option. If you know the receipt number, which is the invoice number, enter it. So let's enter a receipt number, and the system does a Lisa credit check, where it checks all transactions for the customer in the Lisa transactions file to see if it can find the sale. And on this one it did. Lisa stores every item for every customer that is sold or returned at point of sale. If it finds it, the part will be returned against that sale. If the receipt number isn't found, the system will prompt that it's missing lookup info. And if it's found under a different customer, it'll prompt to reassign the customer. And if you enter the default retail cash customer and enter a valid receipt number, it will automatically reassign the ticket to the customer who purchased that invoice. The customer must be identified for each of the other return options. If you try to return against an unidentified cash customer, the system prompts to first identify the customer, as we'll see in a minute. If the part's returned without a receipt, here's the prompt to identify the customer. So let's cancel, get a customer, and when we click No Receipt, the system does a Lisa credit check to check the purchase history. And if a sale is found and the sell price matches the return, allows the return. If not, it prompts to make sure you want to proceed with the return. Sure, why not? If the part is entered without a receipt and the system finds one or more sales, but none has the same sell price as the part being returned, it'll list each time it was sold. Since the invoice number or date isn't available, the return search order setup on the invoice options screen will present them in the oldest to newest, ascending, or the newest to oldest, descending order to help with the selection. I'd probably just pick the cheapest. Now, if you answer non-PartsWatch, you must enter a receipt number. However, the system assumes it's from a legacy system and doesn't check for the purchase. You probably only want to use this option when you're new to PartsWatch. Then you might want to ask support to turn it off for you. And if you click Search, It opens the invoice image window to find the invoice that you're looking for. The return methods we just talked about are used for new, defective, and core returns. Core returns can be returned separately, the same way a part is returned, and can also be returned at the time of the original sale using the core exchange modifier, and the part sale and the core return show on the same invoice. So we see the part and the core return. Since catalog doesn't allow selection of a modifier, if a core part is sold, the system asks if you want to return the core at that time. And here's our part sale and our core sale from catalog. And just so you know, if the core is too badly damaged to accept back, a core sale modifier can be used to sell the core back to the customer if need be. And if warranties are set up for tires or batteries, then returning defective warrantied parts opens a warranty screen with the calculated return amount displayed. The info can be edited, and when OK is clicked, the catalog screen opens to replace the part. And if a part being returned is on a purchase order that has not yet been received into stock, the system will prompt to see if the vendor doesn't have the part or if the customer no longer wants it. If you answer that the vendor doesn't have it, stock is not affected by the return. If the customer doesn't want it, then stock is increased by the return. Even though I'm not going to get into manifests here, when defective parts are returned, they're automatically added to a warranty manifest for return to the vendor, unless they're marked as Do Not Manifest on the part table. Bulk core can be returned from the bulk core return screen off the invoicing menu. Enter the account, check each core being returned, click Add to Invoice, and the invoice screen opens to complete the return ticket. And if a restocking fee is set up on the invoice options screen, then it'll be applied to items returned at point of sale. A manager override can be set up to allow you to edit the fee. And now just a couple things before we end. If you have a customer who always returns core and doesn't want to pay for them at the time of the part sale, deferred core billing can be set up for these accounts. Then 2 invoices print, one for the part and one for the core. However, the customer is only responsible to pay for any core not returned after a certain time. And 2 invoice option setups we haven't looked at. If the return product message at POS field is enabled, the system pops up a message depending on the Do Not Manifest flag in the part table. And the check min cell on new returns and defective returns forces the return quantity to be a multiple of the minimum cell quantity in the part table. And then, once the part is in the invoice body, if all returns are done and the Done Returns button is clicked, the return is added to the invoice. And that's about it for selling and returning parts. The next video deals primarily with the bottom section of the screen and shows how to finalize and tender invoices and to report the sales and returns created at point of sale. So be sure to watch that one next. And then, if you have questions and don't find the answer in the F1 help, please contact your support rep. And thanks for joining us.